when obsession exceeds limits. Welcome, friend. In this meeting, I will help you relax your mind and body to help you fall asleep, immersing you in a fascinating story that will make your imagination fly to distant places. I suggest you find a quiet place where you can isolate yourself from outside noises, turn off the light, and lie down on a soft and pleasant surface. When you consider that you are ready to begin, close your eyes and focus merely on the sound of my voice. Inhale calmly and then exhale. The time has come to start, and you just let yourself go. A long, long time ago, in a place so far from our lands that God's gaze did not seem to reach that far, there lived a poor man who wanted to become a painter. His name was Connor, and his life wasn't much fun. He lived in a small wooden house with his elderly mother, Mrs. Grace, on one of the main streets of a very small town called Rem. Connor wanted to become a painter, but he did so many things during the day that he barely had time to paint. Rem was a very lonely and sad town. No visitors went there for years because nothing was interesting to see. But it wasn't always like this. In the past, Rem was full of lights, noise, and news. However, one day it fell into oblivion, and no one could get the people out of that situation. Connor was one of the few who tried with all his might. He taught classes to the few local children in the mornings, worked in the mine in the afternoons so that he could bring food home, and in the evenings he devoted a few hours to practice on canvas. His mother, Mrs. Grace, was the one supporting him. "Son, keep trying. You will take this place forward with your paintings," she would say, and Connor believed it. The only hours of his day that he enjoyed were those in which he painted. For all this, one day, Connor woke up tired. He approached the village school and said to its principal, "I don't want to teach anymore. I will find my own way." The principal accepted because so many other teachers had told him before him. Then Connor went to the mine, and there he also said, "Boss, I don't want to work here anymore. I'll find my own way." And the boss wished him luck, hugging him. Nobody wanted to live their whole life in that mine, and he understood that perfectly. Connor settled into his ramshackle house and said to Mrs. Grace, "Mom, I've quit my 2 jobs. I'm sorry, but I'm going to dedicate myself to my art." His mother was filled with anguish and fear. "Son, you must be crazy. How are we going to eat and pay the bills?" Connor replied, "When I finish doing my work, we will have so much food that we are going to get bored eating, and I will be so famous that it will be the town who who will pay me to live here." His mother began to cry in anguish. "Connor, you can't just drop everything for the painting. I am your responsibility. You must take care of me," Mrs. Grace told him. Connor replied, "I will live off the air, and the only thing that will enter my stomach will be the hunger for triumph. Mom, beg in front of the mayor's office so that you will survive meanwhile. We both know that nobody is going to let you die for having an empty belly. You can sleep here at night. This will always remain your home." And so things happened. The inhabitants of Rem watched with scandal as poor Mrs. Grace went out to beg day after day in front of the town hall. They were so fond of the woman that with all the money they gave her daily, she had more income than Connor in all the time he spent working in the mine. Connor devoted himself to his art from the time he got up at dawn until the owls announced midnight. Connor was painting with all the resources he had at his fingertips, and so it was for a long time. He got so skinny that the breeze would have blown him away if he went outside, and Mrs. Grace made so much money from alms that she put on 10 kilos in weight. After a few weeks, Connor came out of his house yelling, "I've done it. I've finally finished my masterpiece." Everyone in town flocked to Connor's old house. They carefully climbed the flimsy stairs, dusted corridors, and then came to the room where he had displayed the painting. They all opened their mouths in amazement. Some shed tears of emotion, and a few began to cry. It was a painting of Rem's people, seen from the sky, and it was the most beautiful thing they ever saw. The streets were outlined just as they really were. It could be seen the holes in the asphalt, the forgotten flower fields that lined the river, the apple trees, and even the town hall. The people applauded loudly, and there was never so much noise in the village as on that day. The inhabitants soon wrote letters to relatives who lived far from that forgotten place, inviting them to visit the town. From one day to the next, Connor's house filled with people he never knew or had ever seen, and he smiled as he realized they were outsiders. "I've done it. I've managed to attract tourists to Rem." Connor told his mother that she would no longer have to beg, and it happened what the painter had said exactly. Connor and Mrs. Grace had so much money that they got bored with eating. He gained so much weight that his cheekbones widened to make him look like a huge bear, and he used the fortune to clean the house and make it at least worth living in. Hundreds of visitors came to the town from far away, such as Greece, Italy, China, and even Singapore, to view the famous painting. Many did not speak English, so Connor had to hire a translator to help him with visits. The streets of Rem were filled with people, and all its inhabitants began to enrich themselves with tourism. They sold flowers, orange juices, walnuts, and spirit potions to help them sleep better at night. The next thing that came to pass was that the town began to pay Connor to display his painting and not move. The taxes collected from those who got rich from tourism went into the hands of Mrs. Grace. Connor said, "Take it upon yourself to make our house the biggest and most beautiful place in all of Rem. I wish we had our own castle." So it happened. The house where Connor and his mother lived was demolished, and on top of it, they built an ivory white building with tall pillars, solid walls, and stairs that didn't shake as they climbed. He had more than he had dreamed of, and soon he decided to go out into the streets on a donkey to drop coins on the beggars, the little children, the blind and deaf-mute old women, and even the mayor himself. The small town of Rem grew into a prosperous and pleasant town. Over time, the French came to build a small cinema, Italians set up a restaurant, and even God's gaze fell on the place for the first time because they built a church. Connor's mother would hug him proudly and say, "Son, look at what you've accomplished. I'm proud of you." Connor was happy, but something was bothering him. "Mom, the town no longer looks like I captured it in my painting. I want to make a new one, twice as large and 3 times as detailed, to show everyone how things have improved since I became a painter. It will be my new masterpiece," Connor told her. His mother was scared when she heard him because she saw in his eyes the ghost of a sick obsession. So she replied, "Son, why don't you dedicate yourself to painting other things or forget about art for a while? You are practically the king from this place. What will you do if your new painting causes the city to grow even more? Will you dedicate yourself to making a third painting 10 times larger with 15 times more detail? I suggest you calm down and enjoy what you already have. Your life will pass, and you will not have taken advantage of it if you do not pay attention to my words. Get a woman, marry her, fill this house with children, buy a motorcycle, jump from a parachute. Please do what you want, but do not isolate yourself again, my son." Connor ignored his mother and went to the room where he had the paint, brushes, and canvases. Mrs. Grace's heart was broken, and then she left the house in complete silence, and for a long time she was not seen again. Connor shut himself up again for days and nights to paint. Fortune kept falling into his hands, but he no longer ate or drank water. Connor became as skinny as before and did not die because his soul did not allow it. After 15 days missing, Connor left his room full of dark circles. He had finished the painting, but he did not have the strength to celebrate it. This was everything he had accomplished. The city of Rem, which was no longer a town, looked radiant, fresh and perfect. He smiled proudly and said, "The first one to see this must be my mother." So he went looking for her. He spent all afternoon and all night trying to find her, but it was useless. Mrs. Grace seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. He hired detectives and paid children to search the mountains in case she decided to leave. He achieved nothing. So from the despair, he closed himself up again. In front of the new painting, through tears, he shouted, "Mother, how sorry I have treated you as I did. It is useless to have concluded this if you are not here to see it." And with every second I looked at the new painting, the more I hated it. The new streets irritated him. The modern buildings made him want to vomit. This was not his masterpiece. He had nothing to compete against the first painting. Then, from watching so much, Connor found in his work a tiny person that he had not painted. It was an old woman, sad-looking, begging in front of the city hall. Connor started crying loudly, and he said, "Mom, I was wrong. I do my best to get you back," and grabbed the painting from both corners and ripped it in half. As he did so, his heart filled with relief. Connor then decided to run to the town hall square, and there he found her. His mother was asleep on one of the benches, and she looked as beautiful as never before. Connor scooped her up in his arms and carried her back home. After a half-hour nap, Mrs. Grace woke up. "What happened, Connor? How am I here again?" He replied, "Mother, you will be here forever. I will put down the painting, and from now on, I will honor you. I promise you that I will get a woman to give you beautiful grandchildren, and that you will be the queen of this city from now on." Mrs. Grace did not understand, because for her it had only been 10 minutes since she had argued with her son, but she accepted his apology calmly. Rim's village, which was now a city, continued to grow larger and larger. Connor gave up painting, and by the time the tourists got bored with his work, he was already so rich that he could buy the whole country. He fell in love with a sweet girl and had 12 beautiful children that Mrs. Grace cared for as if they were her own. Although art helped him get ahead, Connor understood that art couldn't be everything in his life.